Um, okay, so that is a little bit about the topics. Then what's this proposal? What's this all about? So before you really get a start on this project, you're going to propose the topic. And it's going to be in a short proposal letter, and I'll show you examples of those as well so you can see what the format looks like. It's 1 to 2 pages, single spaced. You format it as a letter, like a business letter, like that cover letter or something like that. And you're going to propose your topic for your final research project. And the audience for the proposal really could either be me, because I'm the one improving your topic, or your final audience for it. So if you're like, oh, hey, I'm going to write to the St. Louis Parks Department about my feasibility study looking at different ways of increasing the safety of the bike path intersections with roads, which that's a real thing that somebody wrote about once. That was great. And so she had that idea, and then she proposed it to the Parks Department because that was then her real audience for it. And in the end, she wrote that feasibility study and then she gave it to the Parks Department, and she was in touch with them. So they actually gave her data that she used in the study, and then she was able to give that back to the Parks Department. They did end up changing those intersections. And I wonder, it could be that her analysis made no difference at all, but maybe it was something that they considered as they made those decisions, which is cool, you know? So yeah, your proposal could be it could be addressed to your final audience or the person you think is going to be your final audience. The proposal, and I'll have some of these guidelines on Canvas as well. The proposal certainly should talk about the need or the opportunity. Why are you doing this research? Why is it important? What need is it fulfilling? Or what opportunity is it taking advantage of? So you're kind of convincing us in that realm that this research is important, it's valuable, and it's new in some way. Then you want to talk about your plan. What are you planning to do? What are your objectives of this research, or what are the steps that you're going to go through to make this happen? You're going to want to include a timeline as well. And I am just going to say this right now. Every time I introduce this proposal letter, and I think I put it in text for you guys as well, I say I want a timeline in there, and people are like, well, I don't know. Timeline? Don't you already know when it's due? I do. I know when it's due, but no proposal is complete without a timeline. I'm supposed to send you away from this class knowing how to write a proposal, right? So it should be thorough, even if I happen to know when the deadline is for it. Put together a timeline anyway. It doesn't have to be super detailed. It might just be a couple sentences where you talk about your date for completion, maybe the date that you're going to submit a rough draft. Or you could do it as a table or some sort of chart and be a little bit more detailed about it, and that's fine. But do include a timeline. And then you would want to conclude in some way and really wrap it up. I'm going to have quite a few examples to show you of proposals, and we'll hopefully have a chance to talk about them in class. But even if we don't, you can really look at them and get a sense for how detailed you want to be in your proposal. 1 to 2 pages, single space. So it's not some big giant thing, but it does get you started on your paper too. And then much of what you write in the proposal, you can just grab from the proposal and put in your paper. Which is cool. So you're actually starting on your paper when you propose it. Let's say you propose something and we meet about it and you decide you hate that topic and you don't want to write about it. Early on, it's okay to change your mind and you don't have to write a new proposal for it. I would say though, by mid-March, you should have, like after spring break, let's say maybe that week after spring break, a little bit after that. So late March. By late March, and if future semesters, students take a look at this video, if it's a fall semester, then we're thinking about kind of late October as that equivalent. So late March or late October, you're going to want to really have your topic locked in, even if you end up changing your audience or your focus or something. Because where people really get into trouble with this project, where people really get snagged and it ends up being a big disaster at the end, is when they're changing their mind over the course of the time where I'm meeting with people on rough drafts. So everyone else is refining the work they're already doing, and you're spinning your wheels, coming up with different topics and dabbling in them. You don't end up having time to draft and revise a good paper. this isn't the sort of thing you can dash off the night before it's due. It's too long and too involved. It really is something that takes time to do a good job on. So if you don't give yourself ample time, you're really setting yourself up for failure. So do make sure to lock in your topic for yourself pretty early on. If you want to change your mind once, maybe after you've done the proposal and we've talked about it, you might find yourself changing your mind a little bit, or something new will come up and you'll get really excited about it. But you should honestly have 3 solid weeks to work on it, even if you're changing your mind. So that's a little word to the wise. And that's just from my years of experience teaching this. Where people end up with a disaster of a final paper, it's often they changed their mind, they changed their topic a week before it was due, and they just didn't have time to do a good job on it. So as far as sources go on the proposal letter, you can use sources. If you're including data or information you had to look up, like it wasn't something you knew off the top of your head, then you do need to cite it. And I'm okay with you citing it on the same page. You don't have to include a new page for your works cited. You can just do it at the bottom if there's space. But yes, you do have to cite it. I don't care what citation style you use as long as it's something. It could be MLA, APA, whatever you use for your lab reports, that's fine too. But you do have to cite it. Another frequently asked question is, can I use something for this final paper that I am planning on doing for another class, or that I've already done for another class? Yes, they might end up being different in some way, but they might have a lot of overlap. So yes, with a caveat. Yes, but you have to get permission from both instructors. Now, you all have permission from me. I'm saying this right now. This is documented. It's going to be on the internet. If anyone ever wonders, did you get Seema's permission for this? You can show them this video and be like, yes, I had permission to do this in her class and another class. But you have to get permission from the other professor too. My suggestion is, even if you get verbal permission from them, get them to put it in an email or put it in writing. Because just in case anything weird happens, you should have that documentation. But I have had students who maybe are working on a project for another class, and maybe for the other class it's a PowerPoint that they're going to present to the class, or maybe it's a 5-page paper, but they want to incorporate some of that and make it a bigger thing for this class. You can do that, just permission from both professors. If you're working on it for an independent study, the independent study is a class, so you do have to get permission from that professor. But if it's something that you're working on in your job or your lab, and it's not for a credit class at this university or at any university, then you don't have to get your PI's permission. You probably would want to, but you don't have to. It's not an academic integrity violation to be working on something in a lab and then to turn in some of that for a class. I am happy to be discreet about your topics if there's proprietary information in your paper that you don't want published on the internet. Like, these examples that you see online, I don't just indiscriminately put them on the internet. I've asked every one of those students for permission to use their paper, and sometimes there are students who are like, we haven't published our research yet, so no, not until we publish it. And that's fine. So you can do stuff from your lab even if it hasn't been published yet, and it won't end up on the internet. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Eventually, also, in the last 2 weeks of class, you're going to be presenting your work to the class, presenting your research in some way or another to your classmates. And that's a really fun 2 weeks. That's perhaps my favorite 2 weeks of this class. I think it is my favorite 2 weeks of this class, because it's just so great to hear all of the things you guys are working on and really have thought about quite a bit. So that's something to consider as well. The presentation might be quite different from the paper, especially if your audience is really different. So your audience for the presentation is your peers, but the audience for the paper is whatever that audience is. So let's say you're writing a journal article for an academic journal. You're going to have to do something quite different for your peers. But if you're writing a magazine article for something like Popular Science, then the way you explain that to your peers might be really similar, because you have a general public educated audience in both cases. So we will definitely talk more about the presentation along the way. This was more of a chance to just introduce you to that project and get you thinking about it. And so I hope this is helpful. Please ask me questions if you have ideas. I'm happy to help you brainstorm and come up with a good narrowed down focus for a paper. And I call it a paper, but it might also be an electronically submitted, a blog post or something like that. So I'll see if I can get some good examples for you on Canvas. There already are a bunch, but I'm going to put some more recent ones on because I think it'll just be nice to have a good smattering of different stuff from different eras. Nothing's older than 10 years old, but yeah, a lot of them are like 9 or 10 years old. So I'll try and get some newer stuff up there. So yeah, enjoy thinking about this. And this is essentially what we're spending the second half of the semester doing. There's other little stuff that we're going to do, but for the most part, this is the big thing. And it's worth a lot in terms of points and a percentage of your grade. So it makes sense to start early, to work on iterations of it and really refine it. You guys are engineers. You know how this works in other contexts, right? You don't just slap together whatever thing you're building. You iterate, you figure out what the problems are, you solve those problems kind of early on, and it's a process. And that's how writing is too. And so kind of keep that in mind, get started, tackle little pieces at a time. You don't have to pressure yourself on rough drafts early on. You really can just play around with ideas, see how it works if you write this section, see how it works if you address this audience. And that's why we have so many drafts and so many chances for you to get it wrong before you get it right. And that's absolutely okay. I don't grade your drafts. I just sit with you and we talk about them and figure out how to make them better. So yeah, start thinking about it, and it's going to be a neat couple months. So everybody, have a great day. I'm going to turn this off now, and I will see you all in class.